8:38 here, Big 550 KTRS. David Stokes is with us from the Show Me Policy Institute. Good morning, David Stokes.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, David.
The conversation continues about these municipalities, these towns that have 600 people. They have a square mileage of a tenth of a square mile, a half a square mile, and they write 7,000 tickets in a year. That's the story. And as much as we talk about it here and as much as everyone agrees that's the story, it seems like it's kind of still below the surface.
Well, I hope it stops being below the surface once the legislature goes into session in January, because the judges in the various courts can do some things, but I think the legislature really needs to tighten up the Max Creek law.
Right.
The state auditor's office needs to, and I understand they're going to, and they talked about it with you,
right,
audit more cities to make sure they're not violating the Max Creek law. The Max Creek law is the law that says a certain city can't collect more than 30% of its total revenue in fines or other types of penalties.
But the dirty little secret in that is there is no penalty if a town collects more than 30% of the revenues from their traffic tickets.
And so the legislature needs to institute a penalty for that, where that town feels the heat for it. Because right now, if they were following it, and none of them are,
right,
they would just not be able to collect that money. It would go, I think, to the state or to the school district. Somebody else gets the money.
Right.
It's a good idea to take away their incentive, but you have to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no question about it. There's an article in the Post-Dispatch about living in a world where, you're running from the law because you've got too many traffic tickets or you don't have the money to pay for it. And it just keeps it just keeps rolling along.
And it was an excellent article. The Post-Dispatch is doing some fine work on this subject. To those out there who would say, well, just obey the law and you won't have this problem, I mean, we want to stress that the system is bogus.
Right.
I mean, when you're talking about just obey the law, well, if the law is that somebody driving through one of these tiny towns, because in North County, or doesn't not only North County, I mean, St. George was the worst of all, and they were in South County before they disincorporated. You're driving through them, and they're writing you a ticket for 7 over the limit because, and here's the key, they're trying to fund their local government with tickets as opposed to purposes of public safety. Then you're not out there saying just, obey the law, it'll be fine. No, the system needs to be changed. And the Post-Dispatch cited the stats from St. Anne, who, it's just egregious how between 2005 and 2013 went from a little over $400,000 a year in tickets to $3 million a year in tickets, just as their mall was collapsing and not giving them any more sales tax revenue. They're funding St. Anne government with speeding tickets, and there are dozens of other cities in this area doing the same thing.
It is unbelievable. Once you look at the numbers, and if you think to yourself, well, yeah, just don't speed, and then if you get a speeding ticket, pay it. Well, guess what? Some of these people, are riding around paycheck to paycheck. If you get a $150 speeding ticket, then your insurance goes up. Then you got to go pay the lawyer $50 to then plead out to a excessive noise violation, and then it's $300, and it's a never-ending cycle. Then you get one going to the lawyer. Then you get one going back to work. It's like these people are literally being targeted out of existence.
Yeah, that $100 ticket turns into
$600, right?
It's just too much for many people living on fixed incomes.
It's absolutely too much. And maybe if you live in an area and you learn where the speed traps are, like I lived for a while not far from Rock Hill. Like we always knew that little part of Rock Hill along Rock Hill Road between Litzinger and Manchester was a speed trap.
Right.
But if you're along I-70 like St. Anne targets, there's plenty of people driving I-70 who don't know that St. Anne's a vicious speed trap zone. They're just out there getting people to fund themselves. The police are funding themselves, and it's wrong.
I also think, I've been in St. Louis now 16 years, and it was almost like a joke. It was like, yeah, those towns, they get you coming and going. But the sad reality is that these people were living under this oppressive system, right? And so while I wouldn't necessarily get it, I've gotten a couple of speeding tickets in Creve Coeur and wherever else, and it's annoying, and I pay them, and I move on. But I never thought, oh my goodness, my life changes because I have a speeding ticket and I can't pay for it. And then it goes up, and then I get a warrant out for my arrest. Then I go try and get a job, or then I walk down the street, or I'm standing at the wrong place at the wrong time. They run my plates, and now I'm arrested, and then it starts. We used to joke about it, right? We used to make fun of it. It was almost sort of a kitschy St. Louis thing. But it's because of this Ferguson thing, we've now seen and heard the real damage that it causes, and it is talking about keeping people oppressed. That's one of the biggest problems and the biggest complaints these Ferguson protesters have.
Well, and they're dead on right, and it's time for the system to change. It's time for it to stop
Yeah.
being a joke. And I'm a lifelong St. Louisan. I've known about it. And,
Right.
I mean, we've blogged about what was wrong about it in the past at the Show Me Institute, but I haven't realized until some outsiders and some protesters came up and said, this is messed up. We
Right.
need to change it. And we really do in this next legislative session. And before that, through the auditor, through local courts, through local judges making changes.
Yeah. I know John Deals talked about it. He had a bill. They've had bills before. We'll see what happens. But this should be problem 1A that they solve down there. I mean, there's bipartisan support. But again, the other side of that is many of these towns are run by African Americans, mayors, police chiefs, sitting judges, and it's their own little fiefdom. And so you're going to tell the African American community, okay, wait a minute. The problem is your African American towns and the government within these towns, which are African American. So that's going to be an interesting rub. Whereas the people so the African Americans are complaining, hey, we're being systematically targeted here, but you're being targeted by your own town.
But that's not the case in Ferguson, though. In some of those areas.
No, Ferguson is right, but but many of these towns are run or have African Americans running them. So it's not a black or white problem. But the other argument is, hey, we don't have any power. Well, wait a minute, how do you get power? Well, here I have a black mayor of the town of whatever. And so it's this interesting rub. Whereas to fix the problem, to solve the problem, some of these black mayors might lose power.
And that would be fine.
Right.
That would be great. In fact, if it's addressing perhaps the word corrupt is too strong, but a system where you're funding governments through speeding tickets is, I think, corrupt. And it's not. The problem might be most acute in North St. Louis County, but it is statewide. Remember, it's called the Max Creek Law, and Max Creek was out by Lake of the Ozarks.
Right. And they're funding these towns of 700 people, basically making sure that the mayor and the police chief and the judge all get paid. Right. That's the biggest. That's the biggest expense for some of these towns.
Right.
You guys have a fundraiser coming up.
We do, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. We got information on it at showmeinstitute.org. We're very excited. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky is coming to town on Thursday, October 9th, and he's going to be appearing with us here in Clayton. It's a fundraiser for the Show Me Institute. It's not for any of Senator Paul's campaigns. He's coming in as our featured speaker for a Show Me Institute event, and I hope some of your listeners out there would be interested in attending. All the information, times, location, prices are at showmeinstitute.org.
What's the day?
Thursday, October 9th.
October 9th, which is
in the evening.
In the evening. Senator Rand Paul, who's rumored to be running for president, so it's a chance to maybe shake a hand of a man who might be president one day.
It is, and he's going to give at least 2 talks during the evening, depending on which portion of the evening you may want to come to. He's going to be great. He's going to take questions. It should be a really fun, nice evening.
David Stokes, when can I read you? When can we see you?
Everything you can see that Show Me Institute puts out on a number of different subjects at showmeinstitute.org, and you can follow me on Twitter at David C. Stokes.
What'd you think of that Ryder Cup performance by your Americans?
I didn't watch most of it. Any sports I got to watch this weekend was mostly football, and I loved the Mizzou comeback.
How about that?
That's a much more positive. The Ryder Cup performance was terrible.
You didn't miss much.
It was like I do golf, and that was terrible.
It was like you and me were out there playing. All right, David Stokes, be good.
Thanks, guys.
8:48. Speaking of that Mizzou game, we'll talk to Mike Kelly, who had a front row seat for the whole thing. Voice of the Tigers. Mike Kelly joins us.